10, still here, that's all me. Black love 2D.
Okay, hello everybody, we are live. Welcome. This session is about personal narrative for public leadership, aka storytelling as an organizing practice. And we're going to get started with our first question. We would love for you all to share in the chat. Do you hate or love or secretly love public speaking? And I feel like I maybe thought I hated it, but then I secretly loved it. And now I think I'm getting used to just loving it sometimes. Drop in the chat how you all feel. And each of us here in the presenter stage, I'm going to introduce my co-presenters and we'll talk about our experiences with story sharing. We are then going to go into why do we share stories? Why is it an organizing practice? The many different ways that we share stories, but specifically we're going to develop our organizing storytelling practice. This is a very participatory session. So as we will go through the slides, I'm also hoping that you may take notes and we'll have some time for you to do some personal reflection and write down your own thoughts about what story you want to tell. And then you're also going to get a chance to hear from everybody here, their personal stories, a piece of their story of self, and we'll get to learn from them. So I want to get started. Let me see how I can read our bios at the same time as doing the slides. I'll just do them one at a time. So Navi, can you please wave and tell folks that you are here in the chat? I'm going to tell everyone about you. Janauvia, or Navi Anthony, is an Atlanta native, a lactivist, a maternal and infant health advocate, and an RJ newcomer. She's the founder of the Milk Mouth Project, a grassroots community organization that aims to empower Black birthing families. Her commitment to reproductive justice is rooted in aiding her community to break stigmas surrounding bodily autonomy. Next, I'm going to tell you about Lisi Desai. Lisi, can you please wave for everybody? All righty. So Lisi Desai is working in the reproductive justice landscape because she believes everyone, irrespective of their physical or mental ability or socioeconomic status, should have bodily autonomy and equal access to reproductive health, rights, and justice. And finally, Suki or Tsukari, could you please raise your hand for folks? Tsukari Olawumi has been an ultrasound technician providing ultrasounds in an abortion clinic for over 13 years. She says, "I do what I love, which is helping folks make choices for their bodies without stigma or shame. Each day, my goal is to educate, encourage, and comfort those in need that come into my office. I will forever use my voice for those that are constantly being silenced." So this is us, and all of us are connected in some way to Amplify Georgia Collaborative and the team. I've been working with Lisi and Navi for the last 8 months now, and it's been really a joy. And Tsukari and I have known each other for several years now, and we're going to talk about one of the ways that we organized most recently in a little bit. Okay, so that's great. So now I think we need Navi and Lisi to turn off your videos. We'll bring you back up soon. And we're going to start with Tsukari. And this is just, oh, actually, I didn't introduce myself. I'm sorry. I should do that. So my name is Roula, and the places I call home are Atlanta, Georgia. Before that, New Orleans, where I grew up, and also Lebanon, the country of Lebanon, where my oldest roots are from. That is certainly a part of my story. When I was little, I was starting a new school, and there was a lot of new rituals I didn't understand. And one of them was that every morning we would stand up, turn to the side of the room, and face this flag on the wall, and everybody would put their hands on their hearts and say the Pledge of Allegiance. And I was a little embarrassed because I did not know all the words. Everybody else seemed to know what we were doing. We put our hands on our heart, and it really felt kind of like a religious ritual, honestly. It was like something that everyone does. And one day, I'm like 6 years old, I tell my parents about this, that like they're doing this thing that I like feel kind of, I don't know what I'm doing yet. And they were like, wait a minute, what do you mean? And I was like, I don't know. Like, we have to do this, but no one told me how. And they were like, you don't have to. And I was like, yes, we do. Everybody does. They said, no, like, they didn't use the word constitutional rights because I was little, but they were like, you cannot, nobody can make you. You can't get in trouble for not knowing or not wanting to. And it's up to you. But just so you know, nobody has to. That's not a requirement. You have freedom of speech, and you are not going to be forced by a school or the government to pledge allegiance, even to the country that we're in. That's your choice. So to me, I was like, oh my God, like I had definitely been raised with a sense of like grown-ups are supposed to know everything. And it was very confusing to me that one set of grown-ups was saying that the other set of grown-ups didn't know something. And I was like really mortified because I didn't want to be the one just not doing what everybody else was doing. I really wanted to fit in. I wanted to do what everyone else did. But I had like these little flags, these little miniature flags that I loved. I loved them. They were like these two little flags in a stand. One was the red, white, and blue, which was everybody's colors. And the other was also my colors, red, white, and green. The flag of Lebanon is red on top and bottom, and it has, I really love it. It has a cedar tree in the middle that's green. And that cedar tree is like a historic symbol of how old our land is and our people. And then it goes back to Bible times. And that's where cedar came from for the great palaces. And now, you know, we preserve the few that are left in the country. And I was looking at those flags and I was like, I have two flags. Not everybody has two flags. I'm not like everybody else. And I don't want to be. Someday I hope I get to go see that cedar tree. And it's special to me. And so accepting that some of the time I was going to make choices that were different from what everybody else seemed to be doing, whether that meant speaking up or not speaking, but making my own choice about the words that I was going to use and when I was going to speak, was a process. But it started early on. And later in life, when my parents and I would clash, my dad would be like, where did you get to be like this? And I was like, you raised me. You raised me to know that I have the right to say what I believe and to not say what I don't believe. And, you know, today in my life, you know, I moved into working in an abortion clinic, which was such an experience that opened my mind and made me realize that we really, really need to speak when it's important to speak, because there is so much silence and also so many lies about people who are getting abortions and what abortion care is like, people who provide abortion care and support those getting it. And that when it's the most uncomfortable, because we hear the fewest true stories, is when we really need to speak. So for me, I found community in the people I was working with and the people I was working for. And it made me feel even stronger in my choices that I was going to need to keep using my voice and make space for them to use their voice. Today, that's what I do in different ways as an organizer. And so that's why I really love and care about storytelling. So instead of a bio, that is my story. Now I'm going to pass it to Sukari, and I want to make sure that we have a chance to listen to her story. She's going to share what we call a story of self. It's about who she is, where she comes from, and you're going to see it's not a life story. It's not a resume. It's really about where she's coming from when she does what she does. So I don't need to tell you about her story. We're just going to listen to it. But what I would like, because we're going to ask you these questions in the chat, is pay attention. What do you see and hear and feel when you listen to Sukari? Go ahead.
Hi, y'all. My name is Sukari. Most know me as Suki. My story really started to take shape at 6, turning 7. My dad had pulmonary sarcoidosis, which is the scarring of the lungs. So we transplanted my mom, myself, my dad, and my little brother here to Georgia because the climate was better. And I remember going distinctly into the hospital, which is Atlanta Medical now, but it used to be Georgia Baptist back in the day, going into the hospital to check and see on my dad. And all of the nurses just being so kind to me. We didn't have any family here other than us. We had just moved here from Chicago, and them bringing me toys and coloring books, asking us if we were okay. And they left a distinct impression in my little 6, 7-year-old mind that I wanted to help people because I knew they were trying to help my dad get better. So that was the first impression of I knew I wanted to be in the medical field. I started getting my RN at Albany State, and I became pregnant with my first child, so I had to stop going to school. But I always knew that I wanted to finish something in the medical field, so I became a medical assistant. And becoming a medical assistant, they taught me different things, and I still knew that I wanted to be a RN, but my life had to shift because I had a son to take care of. In the midst of all of that, my daughter manifested into existence. And again, my education had to stop because I had to be a mom. But when my daughter started kindergarten, I said, this is it. I'm going to finish. I'm going to do something. I've got to make more money to support my family. So somehow, the physician's office that I worked for, had a technician there that did ultrasound. So I was like, if Denise can do it, I could do ultrasound. So I started going to ultrasound school. And my kids were in second grade and kindergarten. And my daughter and my son inspired me. They said, Mommy, you have to put your report card on the refrigerator. And I was like, okay, this was my motivation to finish ultrasound school. So I did that. And in the midst of that, I lost my grandmother. And I didn't think that I was going to be able to finish ultrasound school because she was such a huge part in my life. I wanted to make her proud because I wanted to be a nurse, but I had to stop to take care of my kids. But here I was in ultrasound school. And ultrasound physics was the hardest thing that I ever had to do in my life. But with my kids supporting me and my family supported me in the loss of my grandmother and me making the promise to her that I would finish school and I would graduate with honors, which I did. I then became an ultrasound technician. In the midst of all of that, I had an abortion and went into an abortion clinic. And the kindness that those people showed me, that held my hand and told me that everything was okay, I then said, ultrasound, abortion clinic, maybe I could find my way into this world one day. And during the great snowstorm Armageddon, where everybody was stuck on 285, 75, I got asked to come and work at Feminist Clinic for one of the technicians there. And it just enlightened me to a world that I had never experienced in all of my life. The love, the joy, the happiness, the community that I had never found myself in, even though I've worked in multiple hospitals, multiple OBGYN offices, even pediatrician offices. I never felt that sense of community that I felt with working in an abortion clinic. And I have been here, like Roula said, for the past 13 years, and this is home. And community continues to grow. I continue to meet new people and help folks get what they need every day. And just, I try my best to show them the same love that was shown to me when I had my abortion. So that's really how I got to be where I am today. If my dad had never gotten sick, if I had never moved here from Chicago and met those nurses that extended that kindness to me, to a 7-year-old little girl, to me even having my first child, to have to stop doing what I wanted to do to become a nurse, for my journey to shift from nursing to ultrasound, I wouldn't be the person that I am. And I think all of those things made me the person that I am. And I'm, grateful for it. So that's all about Suki. Thank you, Roula. Can't hear you, Roula.
I forget to unmute myself a lot. Thank you so much, Suki. And can we get some appreciation in the chat for what Sukari has shared, the fact that she shared, and the content. And now that we have heard it, I'm going to ask people in the chat. First of all, what are some moments that you remember that made you see or feel or taste or hear what Sukari was experiencing? This is really important. I know it can be, when we're engaged, we don't necessarily think about the pieces, but what did you feel, hear, smell, taste? I see putting education on hold to be a mom. That was something memorable. Mm-hmm. Do y'all remember moments, feelings? Thank you, Nandi. Okay, I'm going to ask y'all another question. What values did Suki convey in her story? What values did she convey and how? Thank you. Our moderator says, I was able to vividly resonate with the feeling of being little and recognizing the helpers. Julia says, servitude, or I think you like serving others. The question one more time, Nandi, is what values did you hear Suki convey in her story and how did she do it? The value of community. Okay, and let's talk about it. The next question is about community. What made you feel that Suki has found a community? When did she let you know that? Lisi said that she feels Suki's emotions of being confident in finishing her education and her love for her children. Great. And did you feel community when you heard Suki's story? What made you feel that? The Crowdcast platform is a little tough for like the lag in audio. Sometimes y'all are answering questions after I've moved on to the next one, but I think I'm getting the hang of it. Oh, Nandi, that's so memorable. Yes, when her children supported her and also wanted to see her grades. Yeah. Okay, thanks, y'all. Suki, thank you. We are going to involve you in peer coaching too as we go forward. So thank you for this. And don't go away yet. So I just wanted to tell the story of the abortion speak out that you helped us, that we organized together. You were there in the idea stage. You were there in saying yes to telling your story. And you were also there to hold space in this public action that we had never done before, to hold space for other abortion storytellers. So, when people have, when people go through abortion experiences, they're often told that is our private experiences, but it doesn't have to be secret. We are basically told it has to be hidden, both implicitly and explicitly. Our actual experiences, and actually, let me be clear. I am not someone who's had an abortion. I have been blessed by an IUD that has never failed me to not get pregnant when I didn't want to be. So I will not take up space saying that I'm an abortion storyteller. But what we know is that stories of abortion, first of all, are often lacking. They're just not there. And that they're often, when they do exist, they're filled with myths because they're not from people who have had abortions. And when I started working in an abortion clinic myself 15 years ago, it took a couple of weeks. I was like, everything I thought I knew about abortion was just like naive, wrong, and told to me by people who never had them. And so we really, really need people who have gone through experiences to tell us about them. And that cannot happen if the spaces are not safe. right? And so how does that work when we're trying to create narrative change and make space for, oh my God, like, okay, this is why we did the Speak Out. December 1st, the Supreme Court was hearing the case, Dobbs versus Jackson, that ended up overturning Roe versus Wade. And we were like, this is going to affect all of us in every state. And there's nobody in that courtroom who is going to be talking about the fact that people who have abortions should be making decisions about abortions and should be in every space where important decisions get made. So, we went to the courthouse, the federal courthouse here in Atlanta, and we spoke abortion stories and held space for abortion storytellers in public in front of that courthouse because somebody had to do it. So the role of those of us who did not have abortions or who did not want to share our abortion stories was to hold space and protect and to make as much safe space in that public area as we could so that people could be heard in their stories without fearing everything that that culture tells us is bad about sharing out loud. So Suki, had you done that before? And what made you decide to say yes?
No, that was my first time ever telling my abortion story in front of folks that I didn't know. I felt moved when asked because of what was happening or what at that time was the potential action that was going to happen with the possibility at that time of Roe and HB 481. And it was a very emotional time for me because that was the first time. My daughter knows where I work. She knows what I do, but she had never heard my story. She had never heard it in public. So my daughter was there with me that day. And I had a new community there because it was new people that I had started working with Spark and other folks from Amplify that were there in person. And it's a different energy, a different feel that you get from just being around people that genuinely love you, that don't even know you until that very moment. I distinctly remember me having to ground myself with my back up against the wall, which was the courthouse. And I felt like me telling my story at that particular moment, my story was seeping out of me going into that courthouse, hoping that it would leave some sense of me behind for folks to understand exactly what it was like to have an abortion, what you went through to get the abortion, and to actually tell and speak it out loud. It was difficult for me to even write it on paper. Not that my abortion was a bad experience, but for me just to know that I was going to say it out loud. At times when I was there, I got very emotional, but just to hear the crowd chant, "We love you," gave me a whole different fire within me to be able to continue to speak the words that I had wrote on the paper. And at that time, looking in my daughter's face, she was 24 at the time, she's 25 now, to see the smile on her face, to see her being so proud of me, made me want to continue to use my voice even more for folks that I know who are afraid to tell their stories because of religious backgrounds. I'm a Christian. Some Christians look at you like that you're going to hell, you're the devil, you should have never did it, why are you telling it? Being a person of color, my family, we never talked about abortion. We never talked about sex before marriage. It was marriage, child, the end, period. So I wanted to let other folks that look like me, I wanted other folks that had the same faith as me to know that it's okay to tell your story. So that way someone else could be sitting around at the dinner table to be able to express what it's like to either have an abortion or be able to even support someone that's had an abortion. Because I think that those two sometimes go hand in hand, the person that's had the abortion or the support person that goes with you. You can't have one without the other, and I think you need more. of both to be able to get the stories across and use their voices for other people to even want to come forth. Some people may decide that they don't want to verbally tell it, but want to write it down and let someone else read it, which is okay if they give consent to do that. But I know at that particular moment, standing at that courthouse, I left a part of me there and planted in that wall because that's what grounded me. And my voice was heard loud and proud in front of the circle that was surrounding me, that sense of new community and old community, and being able to see my daughter and hear her say, "Mommy, I'm proud of you." And then her friends were on Instagram because she was streaming it, and they were like, "Your mom is so brave. You know, how can we be a part of the community? What can we do? How can we donate?" And I never thought that it would be that much of an impact, but just a little bit of what you have to tell, you don't know how far it can go or how wide it can spread. So I always try to encourage folks, even here being in the abortion clinic, hey, whenever you're ready to tell your story, I can help you get it out. If you don't want to, then we can write it down and get it said for you. So that's how
Suki,
everything happened that day.
Thank you. You actually answered a few more of the questions that I might have asked if you hadn't answered them. But thank you for talking about that. I was like really moved myself by the transformations that we felt happen in that action, knowing that we were claiming a space that was supposed to be a public space that had never been graced with people's abortion stories before, and we were giving them abortion stories in public. It's a bold action, and it's power to show that we're there and we're doing it in the place where we have been excluded from the decision making because of who's perceived to have credentials to make decisions on such an important thing. The imagery, though, of you willing your abortion story to seep into the wall, I won't forget that. Thank you. I know that we are, we're like quickly moving toward the end of the hour, but I'm going to do my best to make this an abridged but very useful session. Thank you, Suki. You can depart from the stage, but stay with us, or don't depart from the stage, stay on stage, but feel free to turn off your mic if you want. And I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Share. All right, here we go. And we're actually gonna, I think I'm gonna launch us into partway through so that we don't rehash things you've heard. So quick agenda, we've gone through welcome and grounding, and you have heard one of our presenters' stories. We're gonna talk about deciding what to share next, and you will have some reflection time. I hope you've been taking notes already because I don't wanna rush you, but deciding what to share will be next, crafting your story, and then we will have practice time. Then that involves asking someone who is interested to share their draft. We know it's a draft, but share your draft so that we can give feedback and hear from you and be inspired and set you on a course of practicing again. We'll talk about sharing what we learned from the practice of feedback. And then I will offer some quick tips and more information about where to go to learn about deepening your practice and how to care for yourself when you share your story. I want to note this is one kind of a storytelling workshop, and there are many. There are many reasons that we tell stories too. So this is not only for people who have had abortions. We're going to talk about how everybody has an important story to be shared. So community agreements real quick. Please be here now. Learning this practice requires reflection, participation, and challenging yourself. We know that not everybody has a mic on right now, so you can use the chat to respond to whoever is speaking, and we will ask you to do that. Please listen for understanding. It doesn't have to be about formulating your response, but really pay attention so that you can understand. We're going to challenge ourselves in our assumptions, and we know that nobody knows everything, but together we know a lot. And the most important community agreement for this space, sharing our stories is like sex. Consent is a must. And consent can be withdrawn at any time. So we say that to people who are about to tell their stories to the press or share their story with an organization that, at least for us at Amplify, for me and my practice, if somebody shares their story with me, because they are consenting to have it, say, put on our website or on an Instagram post. That doesn't mean that I can put it in our newsletter next time without letting them know, hey, I'm thinking of putting it in the newsletter. Would you be okay with that at this time, right? And if somebody starts sharing with, say, a journalist about their story, and then things are really feeling not right for them, if they're asking questions, if the journalist is asking questions that do not feel like relevant to what you wanted to share, you can stop. You can withdraw consent. I'm really serious about that. Finally, this is where it applies to our group space. If somebody's story moved you in this space, that moment may become part of your story, but their personal experiences do not. Their personal experiences are still theirs, so proceed with respect. We try not to repeat somebody else's story, their personal details and lives, but you can talk about how you heard someone share about a story that really moved you. That becomes part of your story, the transformation that it brought for you. Okay, so storytelling is not a one-time thing. We have tons of opportunities to keep practicing and evolving our stories as we evolve. And so what we do today is going to be one slice of practice. And Lance Armstrong, who I'm going to stop quoting at some point in this presentation because he's a fraud. But if you're worried about falling off the bike you'd never get on, is a true thing for this practice of storytelling and for any kind of organizing. It's also not a standalone strategy. I got really serious about this about 10 years ago. We were hearing a lot of people say, well, at the time it was 1 in 3. Now I think the figure is more like 1 in 4. But if 1 in 3 women has had an abortion in their lifetime or will have an abortion in their lifetime, and of course they said women because that's all that was being studied in the data. But if so many people have had abortions, then what we really need is for everybody who's had an abortion to stand up, stop being ashamed. Don't leave it on the advocates and the providers. Tell your story to people, and that many people speaking up will have to change what we're facing right now. That is not enough, in my opinion. You cannot just be like, tell your story in an extremely hostile environment where you don't see anybody else telling your story, and then we'll all be safe. No. You need additional resources, tactics. You need company and a community. And we need an overall strategy. That's what makes storytelling a tactic that builds movements and brings about change. It's one tool, okay? I don't want anybody walking out of here thinking that what we're saying is everybody go tell your story in circumstances you have not assessed with people who have your back, all right? And we do that with strategy, commitments, and relationships. The structure I'm going to give you of storytelling is just like the structure of organizing. It's a framework for how we do those things, but they are powered by having commitments to each other, having each other's backs, and using our understanding of our own stories and an understanding of the big picture and what we're trying to change. All right, why share stories? Stories can teach and inspire us and move us. This is the 3 facets of public narrative storytelling that we're going to talk about. It engages the head and the heart and eventually the hands and the feet. It moves us to action. But before it does that, we need to understand and we need to feel. Stories also help people understand and remember better than seeing bullet points and facts. Stories show who our community is. They invite others in. They can help clarify our purpose. They can drive home the importance of taking action. And all of these are leadership acts. These are acts of leadership. I'm going to briefly digress into leadership. Who is a leader? In the language of organizing, a leader is someone who enables others to achieve purpose in times of uncertainty. All of us make choices to act or not act in challenging times. So narrative and stories starts by telling us about why this public narrative framework, right, starts by telling us about why someone is called to leadership. That is the story of self, how their values are connected to the collective values of their community. That's a story of us. And it invites people to also share that value and see themselves in the person's community. And then what challenges are happening right now that challenge our shared values so much that urgent action is needed. That's the story of now. We are not going to go through self, us, and now, but just know that that narrative arc really is what an organizer will learn and anybody can learn to tell in any moment. It could be a 2-minute, like I sit down and introduce myself and try to share a little about who I am. It could be I'm an organizer with 2 minutes to talk about what the campaign needs from folks in a new room of people. or it could be a 40-minute keynote speech, or, it could be going on TV. There's so many different reasons we may need to talk to people about ourselves, but some of them are straight up just relationship building, and that is really important in organizing. So public narrative is a specific framework for sharing about ourselves with others in a way that grows the leadership of the person who tells the story and the leadership of the people who are listening, because we move people to take action, and that is how they grow as leaders as well. We do this because inertia, apathy, fear, isolation, and self-doubt, the doubt that any one person could make a change, all of those inhibit action. And you can move people to overcome inaction if they feel urgency or anger or hope or solidarity, or the feeling that you can make a difference. That's what this YCMAD stands for. You can make a difference. We convey those feelings better by showing, illustrating, than by telling. Just saying you can make a difference. Okay, great. Even like tampon commercials are trying to tell me I can make a difference. That's not what we're going to do. What we're going to do is try and make folks feel the times that we have felt that we could make a difference, right? So we bring our values to the story. We help people feel the emotions that came along with the moment of challenge that we were in. And we explain why it's so important in this moment that we're taking action and that we need them with us because we're part of a community. This is all that we're driving towards in this framework. The story of self is our call to leadership, and the story of now explains our strategy and our action in the face of challenge today. Those explain purpose. The story of self connects to the story of us by explaining community. I found my community, and I see you as part of community with me as well. We have shared values, and perhaps we share experiences. And then the story of us and the story of now connect to each other by sharing urgency. This problem I'm telling you about, this strategy and this action, it's not just what I'm doing, it's what I need you to do with me because we are in this together. That is a lot to do. It's a lot of work to put into a story, but that's why we practice and we grow it over time. Last thing I'm going to do, I think, before we take reflection time is start thinking about yourself. You are the character. So this is how a story works. What makes a story, not just a recounting of events, is there is a character, they encounter a challenge, and then they have to make some kind of a choice. And because of that challenge and the choice that they made in the face of challenge, some outcome happened for them or for the world around them. And that's the plot, right? That's the what happened. Like, wow, like some challenge arose and I did something, and then something happened because of that. That's the plot. And out of all that, we usually learn some kind of moral of the story. That can like beat you over the head sometimes, but sometimes it's like you learned something about yourself, and that's the moral of the story. Okay. So we're going to think about this as we write and practice our stories. What challenge, choice, and outcome are at the core of your little story? And I say your little story, not because it's not important, but because we have so many stories in our life. Everybody has many stories. You are not going to tell your life story. You're going to talk about a moment that brings to the forefront something about you that explains how you are or why you are the way you are. Okay? So these questions you ask yourself are, can I identify the challenge, choice, and outcome in my story? And am I telling what my source of hope is? And as I go through this, what details, images, or moments can I use to make sure the story is coming to life for the person hearing it? Okay? So some pitfalls to avoid. You are not giving your resume, telling your whole life story, or a story about the issues. This really is about you, but in a way that is personal, meaning like it's really real, right? It's not what you would open up in the newspaper, and it's not what you would see on your resume. Try not to be abstract. We're not so much needing you to say like, this is about liberty, right? Like, what is liberty to you? How do you feel that in your body and your bones? Or how has it been in your life? That's what we want to hear. And if you were talking about a challenge that was really difficult, don't make your story all about the nightmare. What we want to know is what you, the main character, did, how you transformed. Sometimes the challenge is not about something deeply difficult, like a valley that we descended into. Sometimes it's a mountain we decided we were going to try to climb. That's also a challenge that you can think about. Do share experiences. Pick one or two choice points, like moments where you had to decide what to do, or where you took action, that relate to your calling to be here today. Why are you here in this session? Why are you here at this summit? Why are you here in this movement? Hell, why are you here in Georgia? And why do you care to stay? Tell a personal story in which you are the main character. You may have learned from somebody else, but you're the main character even if they show up. Be specific, vivid, and clear. We want to be able to be there with you. And do share what gives you hope. All right, this is a long slide about thinking about what to share. Were there intersections of your identities you want to bring in? Do you want to let people know who your people are or your communities? Or are there parts of your identity that impacted your experience, made things harder, or gave you resources and resilience that you know that not everyone has? What do you know now about your experience that you would tell a younger version of yourself? What myths exist you want to dispel? Was there a barrier that you were able to bypass? These are many questions, but I think some of the ones at the top I really want you to think about. And then thinking about what to share. What would you have wanted to hear when you were, how would I put this? What would you have wanted to hear when you were who you were at the time of that story? That's one thing that you may want to bring back around to say that your younger self now has. If your loved ones were in the room, what would you like for them to know? And even more, for public narrative, for public leadership, what are 1 to 3 things that you want people to feel or think about after you share? You don't have to spell it out, but think about what those are so that you can make sure they're part of the story. You don't have to set out with the goal of changing minds, but what we want is for people to see and hear and feel where you are coming from. We don't have 7 minutes for solo reflection, but I'm going to give everybody 1 minute to do some thinking. And after that 1 minute, we are going to come back with another story. So while we do that solo reflection, sorry, I'm going to show you this again. Been a short minute, but we've got to pause. We are gonna stop my screen share, and we're going to bring up Navi. Navi, are you ready to share your story?
I am.
All right. Suki, do you mind just turning off your... Oh, no, actually, you can... Let's both turn off our video so that we can see Navi, and then we will come back. You go ahead, Navi.
Hi, everybody. My name is Janauvia, and I go by Navi. I use she, her pronouns. And I'm going to talk about my journey. My story really begins in my journey into motherhood. I began to decide to have my son when I was 20 years old. And most 20-year-olds, finding yourself and also trying to be a mother is very nerve-wracking. In trying to find out what to feed my baby, I stumbled upon breastfeeding. I thought it was so fascinating how we just fed our babies from our breasts and that it worked. So when I tried to find a community that also believed in the values that I hold dear to my heart, I found it very disheartening that in my community, a lot of people didn't breastfeed, or a lot of people in my family or in the people that I talk to, my friends, they just sound like, what are you doing? Throughout this journey, I had to really dig deep into fostering what it looked like for a community to help you and support you and nurture you through that journey. I had a lot of no's, and this battle was met with a lot of people who just did not understand. From someone that's had an abortion before, um, it made me feel that solitude again, that I still wasn't making the right decision. When my son was born, I was able not only to be breastfeeding, but to have a great community around me. When I started to help others breastfeed, I found it so natural to go out there and to share my story with others. And look, you can just put your baby to the breast. It's so easy. Or when people were met with challenges, I was able to find resources and nurture them to continue that journey. So, about my journey into leadership with breastfeeding, I found myself always needing to find someone that looked like me in the bigger seats that needed to tell people, hey, every day we need to go ahead and strive for better. I'm sorry, you guys, because it does make me a little bit emotional when I'm sharing my story. But I was met with a lot of no's in trying to vocalize getting others help. When people like myself in my community found barriers with having to do a lot of work and not getting time off to pump, to provide breast milk because their babies had to go to a daycare or stay with family, I found it very hard to share my story with other people that I felt like would discriminate against me. So in sharing my story, I had to make sure that we let a lot of our barriers down. And I want to tell you, Suki, thank you so much for sharing your story, because during this journey of sharing or practicing our story of self with Roula, I did not want to share my abortion story. I felt like that was something that was very close and near and dear to my heart. But in hearing your story and what you do now, it is exactly what we came here to hear. And I just want to tell you thank you, because I believe that one day I'm going to be able to have that courage to stand in front of an audience and share that story and captivate an audience just like you did. I believe my story of my breastfeeding story fuels my passion of supporting others and lending my voice to a bigger cause. So thank you, Roula. Thank you, Amplify. And thank you guys for your time.
Navi, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing. And can we get some appreciation in the comments for what we have gotten to hear from Navi today? That was really great. We are going to make sure that all three of our story sharers are going to share today. I want to make sure that we get some feedback here in what you heard. What were some values that you heard expressed in Navi's story? How did she express them? Wow, you got some community in the chat, Navi. Okay, everybody, let us know, what values did you hear expressed in Navi's story and how did they get conveyed? We also want to hear, what was the challenge that she ran into, that she told us about? And what was the choice that she made? When she made the choice in the face of that challenge, what outcome did you hear? And finally, were there sections of the story that had really good details or images like sights, sounds, and smells and emotions? And if so, how did those details make you feel?
Yes.
Thank you. Community came up again, becoming a mom at 20, values of motherly love and care. All right, let me see what we can do to make sure that we get what you need, everybody needs from this. This is a really important slide, so I will share it real quick. Before any sharing, we want to make sure that we're sharing what is right to be shared in the moment for this audience as well as for ourselves. So I got this from We Testify, which is an amazing, a powerhouse of abortion storytelling training. A lot of the rest of this training comes from Repower, which is all about organizing and public narrative as part of that. But these lists from We Testify, make this list because I would be comfortable sharing these parts of my story in the immediate future. That's what you're really going to draw from when you choose this next occasion to share, right? There's going to be other parts all the way on the right. I want to keep these parts of my story just for me. That is okay. Nobody can take your story and tell it for you, and nobody should push you to talk about what's not for sharing. It's up to you. And then you've got maybe this range in the middle that you might share them in the future, but for now you're going to keep them to yourself. It might not be the right time or the right place or the right audience. That is fine. Decide what to share after you've written down all of the parts of your story that relate to who you are, why you are, what you have gone through, in what you chose to do in the face of challenges. And then, highlight the ones that you know you want to share. Set aside the ones that you're keeping for you. All right. Now, crafting your story, unless you are in a space that you know is going to be private, or you're telling a heart-to-heart to somebody, a heart-to-heart kind of feeling to somebody, try to share just what you would want to read in a newspaper on Facebook, because we don't know that those public storytelling moments aren't going to get reported in some way. That's a big one to remember for protecting ourselves. Second, please remember that stories have a beginning, a middle, and an end. It doesn't mean it's the end of your life or it comes up to the present day, but you got to land the plane somewhere. Sensory details make your story vivid and memorable. Doesn't mean you have to get down a rabbit hole about it. Just tell us a little bit, and then have a takeaway, what your message or your learning or your value is. Remember, you got your choice, your challenge, and your outcome. You're the main character, and the plot leaves you with some kind of lesson or learning or moral of the story. So we normally would have 5 minutes of solo writing, where I would keep this slide up so that you can take your time to craft your story. I'm really regretful that we won't have time for that. But what we are going to do next, let me stop sharing, is bring up Lisi to the stage. Lisi, can you turn your camera on, and I will turn mine off, and we would love to hear your story.
Hi everyone, I'm Lisi and I'm with Amplify, Georgia. So I have come from a very conservative social setting, but from a very liberal family. I can give you some examples, like it's not only my mom, but my father also used to cook for us. And when I was growing up, like during my teenage, I still used to climb up trees, play marble with boys, and run all over the village. Well, the neighbors commented like, I shouldn't do all of these. Instead, I should stay at home. And then I was the first girl in my locality to be on the merit list and got admitted in English at the University of Dhaka, the premier university in Bangladesh, and the competition was very high to get admitted there. And also, the most importantly, that I resided in the dormitory, which was also not normal for a Christian girl. being in a Muslim majority country. But my family allowed me that. And again, when I decided to get married after my master's, even though I had a relationship then, um, but my family accepted that as well, though it's a usual practice to getting a girl married off between high school and undergrad. So, in our traditional patriarchal society, people are not used to see or even don't welcome the idea for a person with disabilities, especially a girl with disabilities, getting married and having their own family, because it's a social norm that women do all the household chores. So, how can a girl with disabilities be able to manage all the household stuff or raise a baby? It's kind of social taboo. As I developed disabilities later stage of my life during my masters, due to such social and religious stereotypes towards it, I was denied of getting married and forming my own family. But as an independent and educated person, I didn't abide by the rule. I wanted to lead my life my own way. So, despite this social stigma and barriers, I chose to go ahead with my decision of making my own family. But the whole process was not so easy. It was full of stress, especially when you are moving forward against the wind. First of all, what I did in that situation was I retained my trust in the relationship and the person I love, and he's my husband now, and remain confident and stick to my commitment. Then I let my family members know about it because it's also important to me to have their consent and support to what I am doing in my life. And as because they have been always constant support for me. Thus, in the process, I what I have learned is if I stick to my decision and try to get it, I will achieve it. And in doing that, I never ever allow anything or anyone to deviate myself from it. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Lisi. Can we get some appreciation for Lisi in the chat? And we are going to go straight into the questions. Again, what choices in response to challenges? Well, let's start from the beginning. What challenges did Lisi come up against, and what choices did she make in response? And what outcomes did you hear about in this story? And were there moments in particular that made you see, feel, or hear what life was like for Lisi, or what the situation was like? Okay, and then the next question is, what values did Lisi convey? And specifically, how did she convey those values? Finally, how did listening to her story make you feel? So I'll give folks a few moments to share in the chat. It would be really helpful. And I know that we have run over time. We're going to have about 5 minutes after this session to go into break. Oh, I'm sorry, the questions are coming so fast. I know. Let me say them again. What challenges, choice, and outcome did you hear about in this story? Number 2, what values did Lisi convey, and how did she do that? Number 3, were there moments that were particularly memorable or that made you see, hear, or feel? And how did those make you feel? Okay. Yeah, persistence, validating her own experience, not letting anything stop her. I loved that as well. Thank you. Okay, so we are going to have to close out. I'm sorry, this was about half or 2/3 of the amount of content that I thought we would be able to share today. And certainly y'all did not have the opportunity for practice time. That's not how I like to run these sessions, but I hope that practicing giving feedback on other people's stories after hearing them is something you can take away, because these are the pieces: choice, challenge, choice, and outcome. What made us feel and see and hear the moments, and what values were conveyed. Those are how we actually help people tell their stories for narrative, for public narrative. And it's different from other kinds of feedback that we do. And so you can take that to your own development of your story. And I'm going to just offer, we did not have this planned before, but I'm going to offer that if you are interested to go deeper and to practice this in a shared setting like this, where we have a training and you can practice, we do have the ability to hear about your interests. Like here, I'm making a sign up form right now. So you can sign up if this is of interest to you to go deeper and gain more practice of your own. And then we will get in touch if we had enough interest, and I'll let you know about it. So here is the link right now. Go ahead and sign up. Thank you so much for giving us, I didn't realize I've been off camera this whole time. Everybody, please come back on camera if you can, just to say goodbye and share appreciation to the people who were with us for hearing and thinking about our stories. I wish we had more time together, and if you do too, please go ahead and fill out that link and we'll make time to all get back together and practice again. Thank you so much to Suki, to Navi, and to Lisi for sharing bravely and confidently your stories in this space. We will talk to you all soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Also, if some of the chats are coming in late, we will stick around and just appreciate them and take them with us. Thank you. Bye, everyone. 3:15, your next session will start.